Training camp and preseason is over, which means it is time to cut down this roster to 53 players and then a couple of guys on the practice squad. Now, there's going to be a lot of guys and a lot of decisions that need to be made at some key positions like wide receiver. That's one of those positions. Tight end is a big one. Even the defensive line, linebacker, safety. Like, is JT Woods going to make this team as a safety or a cornerback, or is he even going to be on this team at all? This is kind of what I think is going to happen and what I want to happen. So this is kind of a combination. The final 53 that I'm going to present here is a combination of what I want and I think what Joe Ortiz is going to do. But also, let me just say this too. With the way that Joe Ortiz has been kind of managing this roster thus far in terms of how many guys that he has gone out and signed, I would expect this final 53 and probably everyone's prediction of what this roster is going to look like. I don't think it's going to be accurate at all, because I think he is almost certainly going to go and get at least one or two different guys that are cut by other teams to go onto this final 53 roster. And then whoever, you know, is going to be cut for the sake of those guys, probably going to go on the practice squad, and then they're going to be called up and down during the season. They're going to be like one of those guys. But let's get into this final 53. Quarterback position. This one is the easy one. Also kind of the confusing one, but Justin Herbert's going to be the starter, obviously. QB1. And then QB2, it's not going to be Luis Perez, man. It's probably going to be Easton Stick. I would love for Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh to really, you know, cut their losses here with Easton Stick and just be like, all right, let's go and find a quarterback from a different team that was cut. Like, I know Mike White was cut, and a couple of people were talking about him. I'm not interested in Mike White. I'm still interested in Trey Lance, even though he threw 5 interceptions. I actually think he could be cut and get onto this roster. I would love that. It's not like Trey Lance is a great quarterback. He threw 5 interceptions, but you know, he's better than Easton Stick. That's the whole point here. We just want somebody better than Easton Stick. He doesn't have to be an amazing quarterback. I would expect and hope that the Chargers do cut Easton Stick for the sake of one of those quarterbacks that is going to be cut by a different team, and they pick up that guy. So I think it's going to be 2 quarterbacks on this roster. If it's not Easton Stick, it's going to be somebody else that gets cut. Now let's go to the running back position, because I think they're going to keep 4 guys here. I think it's going to be J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards as the top 2 guys, obviously. Now I think running back 3 is going to be Kamani Vidal, the 6th round pick. This might be a surprise to some people because Jaret Patterson was getting a lot more of those reps in preseason as well as in training camp. But I think Kamani, like, part of the thing is Kamani was held out sometimes and during the first game because of injury. He showed a lot in that Rams game. He looked like easily the best running back on this team, you know, barring J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So I have him as RB3. I actually don't even have Jaret Patterson making the roster because I think Isaiah Spiller might beat him out, because that's a different style of running back. Okay, Kamani Vidal brings that power and that shiftiness that Jaret Patterson has, that shiftiness, right? But Isaiah Spiller is more of a power back in between the lines, and he has speed to his game as well, so it's not like you're losing any sort of speed. It's not going to be like Austin Eckler last year along that left sideline. Remember, I think it was in the Packers game where he got caught. It was like he's running in a dream, like running in slow motion and you can't move, you know what I mean? But I also think that he's going to make this roster because of his special teams ability. And the special teams, Chargers were one of the best last year. I think they're going to be one of the best again this year. That's why I have Isaiah Spiller making this roster over Jaret Patterson. And now for wide receiver, I think it's going to be Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, DJ Chark. This isn't in order, by the way. Ladd McConkey, Darius Davis, Simi Fehoko, and Brendan Rice. I think they could keep 7 wide receivers very realistically. I don't think it's going to be either Simi Fehoko or Brendan Rice. I think they've both done enough to make this roster. And you don't need to sacrifice one of those guys, because if you do cut one of them, I think it's almost certain that they are going to be picked up by another team. And Cornelius Johnson, the 7th round pick this year, I think he can be cut and then put onto the practice squad and be more of a developmental guy and a guy that comes up onto this roster in case of an injury. But I do have the Chargers keeping 7 wide receivers because I think Simi Fehoko has done enough to earn himself a roster spot. If he didn't, I might have them keeping only 6 and then having another tight end, because at tight end, I have Hayden Hurst, Will Dissly, Tucker Fisk, and then either Zach Hines or Stone Smart. And I think what they could do is they could start Hayden Hurst on IR, because I don't know how serious that injury is, but they went out and signed a couple tight ends. And so Zach Hines or Stone Smart, I have both of those guys, you know, kind of vying for one roster spot. They could both make this roster if Hayden Hurst starts on IR. But also, I don't have Donald Parham making it because I just don't think he's as good of a blocker as he needs to be. And he's getting up there in age. He's like a 5-year veteran now at this point. He's 6'9". He's got that really good length to go up and get a ball in that end zone. But that's kind of the only aspect to his game that is really good. And if you're going to sacrifice all of those other aspects of football, like blocking and route running and just kind of, you know, running after the catch, things like that, I don't think you do that just for the sake of that one skill that Donald Parham has. I think you keep Stone Smart or Zach Hines if they like enough of what they saw from him in practice. Now, offensive line, obviously the 5 starters were Sean Slater, Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, Trey Pipkins, and Joe Alt, so that's 5. But then in the backups, I think Tyler McClellan is going to be on this team, but he's going to be on IR, so they're going to have him to a reserve future contract. I think he probably would have done enough to make this final 53, so it sucks that he got injured in this last game, but I think Foster Sarrell is going to make this roster now because of that. Jamar Sawyer, Jordan McFadden, obviously they've done enough. Brennan Hymus, and then Alex Leatherwood is going to make this roster, I think, because I think they like the intangibles of Alex Leatherwood, even though he's really not a very good offensive lineman. I did not like what I saw from him at all this preseason. I think he let up like 11 pressures. His PFF grades were really not good at all, but I think, again, it's because Tyler McClellan is on IR. He probably would have been one of those guys that would have been sacrificed. I think, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of having these 5 backup offensive linemen, I think I would honestly just cut Alex Leatherwood off of this. I'm going haywire here a little bit. I'm going to cut Alex Leatherwood. I'm going to have another guy onto this 53, probably on defense. Okay, so defensive line, I got Otita Agbonia, Poona Ford, Scott Matlock, Justin Aboigbe, Morgan Fox, and Teair Tart. That is 6 defensive linemen here. I don't think Chris Hinton had done enough to make this roster. Jared Clark is a guy I know a lot of people like. I think Teair Tart is a better version of what Jared Clark could be. So I got these 6 defensive linemen. I think this is pretty set in stone. I don't think anyone's going to argue this. I like all of these guys to play their certain roles. Justin Aboigbe is the only guy that I'm kind of thinking, like, I didn't see a lot from him. I didn't see anything from him, really. And I just think he's going to make this roster because he was drafted and the Chargers see a lot in him. So hopefully we'll see what he has in the regular season. Now, linebacker is kind of like a sneaky strength for us on defense. I think Navarro Bowman has done a great job coaching these guys. Jesse Minter too. But Junior Colson, Denzel Perriman, Daiyan Henley. I think Nick Neiman might start on IR depending on how severe that injury is. But Troy Dye as well. And then if Nick Neiman does start on IR, I'd like to see Shane Lee make this final 53-man roster. I saw a lot from him in that Rams game. I think he's got a very high ceiling of what he could potentially be as a linebacker. I also do like USC football, so hey, maybe I'm a little biased, but Shane Lee is going to be on this roster if Nick Neiman is starting on IR. That's what I want to see. And also, Shane Lee is going to be that guy that makes this roster if Alex Leatherwood is not, and we keep only 4 backup offensive linemen, have 9 offensive linemen, which I could totally see happening. So we would be keeping 5 linebackers instead of 10 offensive linemen. Now for edge, I got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree, Tui Pelotu, and then obviously Tre'Mon Morris-Brash, bro. Hey, well, do I need to say anything more about Tre'Mon Morris-Brash? That dude has been flashing ever since training camp started, as soon as the pads got on, really. Even before that, actually, because we saw that clip of him just doing that spin move on Trey Pipkins, making him look goofy. But Tre'Mon Morris-Brash, really excited about him. We got 2 really good young edge. Well, not really good. We need to wait and see for Tre'Mon in the regular season. But Tui Pelotu and Tre'Mon Morris-Brash, I think the future is bright. We got some young guys at edge that I like, especially good because Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack getting up there in age. Bud Dupree as well. So those are 3 veterans that are playing well. And Tui Pelotu, Tre'Mon, 2 young guys that are starting to, really prove themselves. Now, at cornerback, I have Asante Samuel Jr., Christian Fulton, Dean Leonard. I actually think he played pretty well this preseason for the most part. I liked what I saw out of him. He's pretty physical as well. Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still. Now, that's 5 cornerbacks. Didn't really see a lot from Cam Hart in the preseason or in training camp, but I have him making this roster because he was drafted by this regime. Tarheeb Still, we saw a lot more out of him in preseason and the training camp, but he actually flashed a lot in a couple different areas like run defense, blitzing, and in pass coverage. So I would actually put Tar Heel still above Cam Hart on the depth chart. Like I said, this isn't really in order, but yeah, 5 cornerbacks is what I have right now. I don't have Ja'Sir Taylor making this roster because I don't think he did enough to really cement himself as like a starting nickel or really just a part of this defense. I could be wrong, but that's how I would have this roster, but I could totally see Ja'Sir Taylor making this roster over somebody else. You know, I don't know, but I could see that happening. Now at safety, I have Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, AJ Finley, and then JT Woods. Now I know there's going to be some people that are going to be mad at me for wanting JT Woods on this roster over Tony Jefferson. Tony Jefferson, let's just be honest, he played lights out last week, or really Saturday, I guess, against the Cowboys. He was really good, the best player on the field, but he should have been. Like, he's a 32-year-old safety, let's just be honest. And he only flashed in that one game, did not flash really at all in training camp. He had a couple plays in training camp, but didn't flash in the other preseason games. And a 32-year-old safety, am I going to keep him over a guy like JT Woods that has shown that he's got the intangibles, the speed, and also the size? And now you're starting to move him on outside corner. I would like to have JT Woods on this roster over Tony Jefferson, even if he's not as good as Tony Jefferson right now, because the ceiling is higher. And I trust these coaches to put a guy like JT Woods in a better position, or at least a position where he can be the most of what his potential is. You know, he can reach his own potential. An outside cornerback may be the move for him. I don't know. But also that versatility. JT Woods, he can play outside. He can play even nickel maybe. I don't think Tony Jefferson can do that. I like Tony Jefferson as a veteran leader, but I don't think we need Tony Jefferson as a veteran leader when we have Derwin James and Alohi Gilman, you know, guys like that. So I don't have Tony Jefferson making this roster, but it's really only because of his age. If he was like 20 years old or even the same age as JT Woods and he played that well in this past preseason game, I'd say, yeah, for sure, I'm having to make this roster. You know, it'd be kind of like Austin Eckler forcing his way onto the roster. But because of the age, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. And then our last 2 roster spots, obviously Cameron Dicker and J.K. Scott. You know what? I just thought I need to cut somebody on this roster because Josh Harris, the long snapper, is probably going to make it. Okay, so hold on. You know what? I would have to cut one of these linebackers. So instead of keeping 5, I would keep 4 linebackers, and I'd probably... it would be Troy Dye. Troy Dye would have to be off of this roster. I'd like to keep him. Maybe if one of these guys that I listed already can snap the ball as a long snapper, then Josh Harris would be cut. But, you know, Josh Harris, pretty good long snapper. I don't want to mess with anything there. I'm going to have to cut Troy Dye for the sake of our long snapper there. So that is my final 53 prediction. Kind of what I want, also what I expect. I also would expect, like I said, a lot of guys that are going to be cut from other teams to possibly make their way onto this roster. So this is probably not going to be accurate, just letting you guys know. And if you did not see my last video, then you can click right here.